last and certainly not least, I would like to invite Carlene Pick up to speak. She is a mental training consultant and works with athletes and teams teaching mental training techniques and team building strategies. She received her bachelor's from St. Mary's College and her master's degree from John F. Kennedy University. She was formerly a professor in the sports psychology master's program at John F. Kennedy University, and she is the author of the book, Winning the Mental Way. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce Carlene Pick.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I think I'm going to take a page out of Jamie's book here and outside of here. All right, so thank you so much for having me. My name is Carlene Pick, and I'm a mental training consultant. I work with athletes and teams, all levels, all sports, and work quite a lot in baseball. I currently do the mental skills training for LSU baseball and was fortunate enough in 2023 to be with them in Omaha when they won the College World Series. So today we're going to be talking about a couple things. We'll be talking about why mental skills training, highlight 3 different mental skills training strategies, and then provide an overview of a newer concept as it relates to sports injuries. And then no disclosures. So why mental skills training? A lot of people ask that. Why mental skills training? There's so much time and energy spent on the physical side that the mental side often gets left behind. So similar to strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists, mental skills training can be that add-on to all the different pieces. So, and it gives them a sense of control. Gives them a sense of control for the things they're working on, particularly as it relates to injured athletes, which can be such an unknown entity, so foreign to them. So this actually gives them a sense of control back around these pieces. Can assist in building confidence. So implementing strategies such as goal setting, positive self-talk, imagery, all those things give athletes a sense of self-control because they've actually utilized these skills, and now they can put them in their sport or in their rehab setting. And it can be valuable in providing a positive and relaxed mindset. We heard Jamie, the speaker prior, talk about breathing. That's a great strategy, something that can really, I always say it's something that it's the simplest thing, but it provides so many benefits to them and can provide a sense of positive and relaxed mindset along the way. And can be helpful during setbacks. So again, when there's something like this, it could be they've change teams, going through an injury, going through rehab. The mental skills training can be something that they can really latch onto and feel like now they are making progress in their sport specific to this. And if young athletes know more about the benefits, then they might be more apt to try it and have a more positive view about it. There's often a thought of, well, there must be a problem. There must be something of that nature, rather than no, it's a resource like everything else. So if they can really lean into that and give it a go, then they might have a positive thought about it. And like the great Yogi Berra said, 90% of sports is 50% mental. Really bad math, of course, but it's a really good, just a reminder that it's actually something that they can work on as it relates to their sport. So specific to working with younger athletes, I think it's really important to meet them where they're at. They're not always ready, and if it's something that we put on them, they might pull back a bit. So really understanding, hey, are they ready for this? Is this something they want to integrate into their sport or into their rehab? And then I find it really important to educating them on the what, the why, and the how. The how being really important. They're not really going to engage unless they understand how it's going to benefit them. And I guess we're all kind of that way as well, but particularly for younger athletes, that's really important for them. Keeping it fun and creative. It should never feel like school, never feel like homework for them. It should feel like something that they can add on to what they're doing. Keeping language and terms simple. Athletes in general have no inclination to know about any theoretical underpinnings of something. They just want to know, what is it, can it be helpful, and let's get going. And then using metaphors or analogies, things to kind of help them along. Sometimes we talk about like a pizza analogy as their sport, and then all the toppings are those are all the mental skills trainings. I also often have them go through like a lemon imagery, which is a great one because we all know what lemons taste like. Like it's usually not our snack of choice. There's usually a strong reaction to it, kind of that good pucker, that throat, that mouth watering, and it's a great example for them on how strong the mind-body connection really is. And then the 3 tools we're going to talk about, we're going to drop them right into that toolbox there, are goal setting, imagery, and positive self-talk and confidence building. And then, so the first we'll talk about is goal setting. Something they can implement in all areas of their life, not just in sport. It could be for school, it could be for their rehab setting, but a really great tool that they can utilize in all different ways. So we'll just go over some few benefits. The first one really packs a punch here. Can enhance accountability, motivation, confidence, enjoyment, and increase their self-awareness, which is really important. Provides a roadmap, helps clarify expectations. I always give the analogy of if you're going to take a road trip and you know where you want to go and you kind of line out, okay, well, here's how long it'll take us, here's how many stops we'll make, and then you'll get there in the most efficient manner possible. And if you don't have a roadmap, if you don't have a plan, you're eventually going to get there. It may take a few turns along the way, may take a bit longer, but it's always better if you have an efficient route. So that goal setting will help give them that roadmap and clarify the expectations. Okay, gives them a sense of control. So particularly, again, if they're going through an injury, sports, there's so many things we can't control. Part of the reason maybe we love sports as well, you just never know. But the goal setting piece actually gives them a sense of control in terms of the things that they're working on a day-to-day basis. And it can really some of the monotony of training and rehab. They can oftentimes just go through it, just kind of getting through the day rather than, okay, well, how can I win the day? What can I do today to feel like I've won the day and can walk away feeling really good and confident? And some days there's going to be really small victories and some days there's going to be bigger victories, but just knowing every day there is a victory to be had if we have a daily goal for ourselves. And with that, everything becomes really purposeful and intentful. So whether they're walking into a rehab session with, a physical therapist, one of you, they know, hey, okay, we've talked, here's the goal for the day. Whether they're at practice, now they have a goal for the day. So everything becomes even just a little more exciting as well once they go into that. Different types of goals. We'll just kind of go over here a couple different ones. So process goals were the ones they have the most control over, the ones that have some flexibility. Those are the actual specific techniques, things that they're working on, and mechanical pieces. Certain number of days of training. Those are all the things that they can control day to day. So those are the smaller bits, the process goals. And then the performance goals are really their standard of the things that they're working on. So they're not comparing themselves to anyone else, but their own personal standard, which is really important in sport and really important in rehab. It shouldn't be about what anyone else is doing. It should be about what they're doing and what they want their performance to look like and what a win looks like for them. And then the last one, the one they have the least control over, is winning in sport and then actually when they do return to sport. Again, it can be a lot of ups and downs and really being able to take that in and know, okay, I can't control that piece, but I certainly can control, I'm going to come into, my session today, go into practice today with a really good mindset, and here are the 5 things I'm going to work on today. So it's become a little more tangible for them. And there's a lot of different guidelines around goal setting. A lot of people say they set goals and it's to do well and get better, which are great, but they're not really rooted in anything specific. So there's, again, a lot of different acronyms. This is the one that I like the best. It's a SMARTS guideline, the S being specific, so there isn't that vague piece. There's the actual specific piece of it, such as a golfer may say, today during 9 holes of golf, I'm going to par 2 of those holes. All right, so that's super specific. They'll walk away knowing like, okay, I made good progress on that, and they'll know where they're at with that rather than I'm just going to play well today. Okay, so it has a little more impact to it. Measurable, same thing. So someone may say, well, today I want to run on the treadmill for 10 minutes. Okay, super specific. So that's really important that they're setting these goals in a really specific manner. And then action-oriented. So something that they're actually doing, they're taking control over. I also like adjustable here. I think it's really important just in sports and in rehab as well to know the goals are adjustable. I always say they're written in pen, but there's an eraser. There's always a way we can make adjustments along the way. That's because we're human. Things happen, things come up. So really important to know that there isn't a rigidity to it, but there is a way to actually be flexible. And that's important to do that. Some athletes shy away from that a little bit. They say once they write the goals down or have their goals that they're set. And I say a really good athlete knows that, I'm going to be so self-aware and so mindful of the fact that I'm going to make an adjustment here because life happens, sport happens, injuries happen. Okay. Realistic, so it should be challenging enough to where the athlete feels like it's pushing them, but not so much so to where their confidence is just taking a real shot because they've set it too high and won't be able to achieve that. So there's that balance there. And then timely. So there's some time to it rather than I'm going to do well someday. About as vague as you can get, right? So no, here's what I want to do today. Here's what I want to do by the end of the week. Here's where I want to be at the end of the month. And I always say it's small bits. So you win each day, and then you turn around and you look like, gosh, that was a really great week. And then they just keep doing that again and again. So you hit repeat. And then self-determined. So there's a sense of accountability for the athletes once they've created the goals. Now, it may be in collaboration with, their mental training consultant, someone like myself, their trainers, their coaches, but there's an actual, at the end of the day, they signed off on the goals, and there's a stronger adherence if they've actually signed off on their own goals. Okay. Additionally stated in a positive manner. I don't know how many times I've heard athletes at all levels say, oh, my goal today is to not strike out. I'm like, okay, well, how about let's lean into what we want to do, and let's take out the other piece. And so much more control over the things that we want to do. And that's just for some reason we're wired that way in terms of looking at the things that we want to avoid, rather than, okay, let's state everything in a really positive way. And then using words like at least and more than, I find that's really helpful, so there's no sense of complacency. So there's something that they want to achieve, and if they get a little more for the day, that's phenomenal. But it isn't something where, okay, I've gotten that, and now I'm just going to, kind of phone it in for the rest of the day. It's like, well, no, let's see what else I can do for the day. So the wording can be super important. And then written down. So there's a lot of value in writing the goals down so you can see them, and we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of how to keep them visible as well in the next slide here. Okay, some possible pitfalls when it comes to goal setting. So setting those unrealistic goals, setting too many goals, and outcome-only goals. This can often really deter an athlete from setting the goals in general if they've done this. If it's too outcome, if they've set 15 goals rather than setting 2 really good ones. I always say it's quality over quantity when it comes to this. And then not reevaluating and adjusting the goals on a regular basis. So back to that, it's okay to make an adjustment and know that that's probably a smart thing to do, and then see where that leads them as well. And then keeping goals, not keeping goals visible. So once you write them down, really important to keep them visible so that you see that. And you hear a lot of athletes talk about that, about seeing their goals. I remember Shaun White, the snowboarder, talked about that, how he had the goals. I believe he had them up on his ceiling, quite frankly. I think that's what he said. So keeping them visible, so it could be, on a mirror, on their phone, on their refrigerator, wherever it is, so they can actually see those. And it's just a good reminder of what it is that they're working towards. And then just knowing that in general, some athletes get really worried about setting goals. They don't want to disappoint anyone. They don't want to fall short. And that's okay, knowing that, there is no wrong here. It's more about, okay, well, what works for you? A win for one athlete is going to look very different for a win for another athlete. And a win, I don't mean outcome. A win, I mean having a great day. And then best to set a combination of daily, shorter, and then long-term goals. I always liken it to a staircase. We're not going to take, from the bottom to the top in one fell swoop, while as people were impatient, while young athletes even more impatient, all right? So really important to know that it's a step-by-step thing, and knowing you can, you take one step at a time, and then you can actually reassess from there. You can be halfway up the staircase and go, okay, I'm going up the right staircase, this is good, I'm going at a good pace, and then keep going from there, okay? So the next one we're gonna talk about is imagery. Some people call it visualization as well. We go. So it's really creating or recreating an experience in our mind. Okay. So some of the benefits of imagery is just additional training or practice. So they can actually be, here at the facility doing some exercises with you all. They could be out on the field or court with their coaches, and then they can go home and do some more additional work as well, or even before. So it's just that more piece of working on that muscle memory, the more training and the more practice. It assists with learning new skills and error correction. So it could be a brand new something they're working on, a brand new exercise you've given them, and now they can actually take additional time and work on that away from here, so they can do that at home. It's a great skill because it goes with them everywhere and doesn't require any equipment. And it can also help with consistency and training and performance. So it's that deja vu. They've gone over it so many times in their mind that once they actually get there, there's so much confidence again in, okay, I've got this, I've done it, and now I'm just going to go out and actually see it come to fruition out on the court or field. And then it also facilitates relaxation, helps to maintain concentration and a positive attitude, mental toughness, and confidence. So a lot of good benefits there on the imagery. There we go. Okay. So some best practices to keep in mind with imagery: multisensory and vivid. So making sure that all the senses are incorporated. So what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, and then the kinesthetic feel. And not in all sports are all those senses going to be impactful. But for example, a swimmer, the smell of the chlorine, the smell of the pool, the taste of the water, that becomes a big part of their imagery script because that's their sporting environment. So again, that's going to look different for a lot of different people. Positive. Definitely want those images to be positive. Now, they can certainly work on error correction and seeing themselves, get better at something, but making sure they're always landing on something positive. And then there's the internal versus external perspective. So there's value in both. So the internal perspective is literally like this perspective. You're in your own shoes. You can see you can see and feel what a good motion feels like, just that kinesthetic feel, all the emotions incorporated in that. And then there's the external piece where they really kind of peel back, kind of a video game, or a video perspective where you're seeing it from the third person, which can be really great when it comes to form and technique, body language, all those pieces, so you can really see that as well. And different types of imagery. Miller, Monroe, and Chandler did a phenomenal article really just breaking this down in complete detail and depth as it relates to athletes, to young athletes. But we'll just go over a couple here. So cognitive skill-specific imagery. So that's the actual skill execution. Those are the small bits. That's proper form. That's working on all those different smaller pieces. And then there's the motivational imagery. So athletes seeing themselves achieve their goals, seeing themselves do well, seeing themselves have successful performances in the future, going over past ones as well. And then there's also kind of a healing imagery where they're seeing their injured part mend and get stronger. Now this one obviously requires a really strong knowledge of the anatomy of their injury, so they need to work particularly closely with their PT and their medical team for this one as well. We will. As I tell my athletes, prepare to be flexible. We'll just switch over to using that one. Different things to image. So going over peak performances, I have athletes write down a lot of their past performances. Everyone has those, athletes have their performances that they're super happy with, super proud of, and those are the ones that they actually go through in their mind as a peak performance. So that's a great thing to be able to do. Simulating different sporting situations, so seeing themselves, I work a lot in baseball, so turning double plays, what they might do in particular situations with that, different sporting environments, learning a new skill, correcting mistakes, and making mechanical adjustments. So there's really nothing that an athlete can't image or use imagery for. And then additionally, using imagery to maintain skills while injured. This is something I talk so much with athletes when they've gone through injuries is this is something that can help you, so when you get back out there, you're not as rusty. So let's go, and it's something that they can do. And for a lot of athletes, this really feeds their competitive spirit because this is the only place they can compete, right? This is the only place where they can actually go out there and having it bad, or be at a swim meet, or really just feed that competitive part of them is in their mind. So let's go ahead and utilize it, and then again, once they get back out there, not quite as rusty. And just a couple quotes here I put on here, just kind of athletes talking about this. So Russell Wilson, when he was with the Seattle Seahawks, I visualized myself every day since I was a little kid to be in these moments. I visualize it being 4th and 7. I visualize third downs. I visualize red zones. And then more recently, Scotty Scheffler, right after he got that injury, I think right around the holiday time, the golfer, I tried to almost train a little bit at home to remind my brain what I was feeling on certain shots, what my hands felt like on the club, stuff like that. So I wasn't totally checking out from golf. So you hear athletes really just kind of name it in terms of, yeah, I use visualization. And then you hear athletes really, that's really what they're talking about. And that's what I tell my athletes too. It's not a new skill. So many of these things, they're not new. We're just giving them a name and actually having them be a consistent part of their preparation. So it also alleviates that piece of, I don't want to try anything new. It's like, well, no, you're doing it. You're always doing these pieces, but let's find a way to make it really be impactful for you. So the last skills we'll talk about are how to build a positive mindset and confidence. So that the self-talk is really just that inner dialogue we're constantly having with ourselves. We don't even really realize half the time, what that is, and not even always certain for young athletes if it's something that's helping them or not helping them. So I find the first step that's super helpful is to have them identify which self-talk isn't helpful. So there's the obvious ones, the can't, the don't, those kinds of words, and they are plentiful for athletes. They're plentiful for us as humans, but they're extra plentiful for athletes. And then what I call the stealth negative self-talk. So what that is those are the ones that really just create pressure. The ones that say, I have to do this, I need to do this. The one that create the white knuckles, those are not helpful as well, and they're just as non-productive as the can'ts and the don'ts. Excuse me. And then I often ask my just athletes in general, are you your own best friend or your own worst enemy? With the things I would ask them, are the things you're saying to yourself the things you would say to your friend or your teammate? And oftentimes the answer is no. So I'd say, okay, well, let's work on being our own best friend. You're a great teammate. You're, a great friend to all these other people. Let's actually turn that around and make sure you're utilizing that for yourself. Two different kinds of self-talk. They're often kind of categorized as system 1, system 2. The first one is the automatic response, and that's usually that laden with that emotion of, oh, that was great. It can be positive, or oh, I can't believe that happened. And it tends to lean a little more negative. There's also, I had a conversation with an athlete a long time ago about compliments, and they kind of looked at me and like, well, oftentimes athletes, when they get a compliment after a game or practice, someone will say that was really good, they'll be, yes, but, and then they'll name 3 things that they didn't do well. It's like, okay, well, how about just thank you? And it was a brand new concept, but that just really speaks to, that's the instant response is, no, not so much. I could do much better. So that's kind of the part of, okay, well, let's turn that around and really start leading with the positive a bit more. So the intentional self-talk is really that motivational and instructional self-talk. So those are those verbal reminders, verbal cues, I've got this, trust your preparation, keep my proper form here. Those are things that can really be impactful because they're instructional, they're helpful, and they're positive. So oftentimes it's changing the first one into something that's more motivational and helpful for them. So strategies to change negative and non-productive self-talk to something that's more positive. The reason I have it up there as negative and non-productive is because it isn't always about, changing it from, I can't to I can. And some athletes, they really don't operate best in things that are super positive and, sugary or flowery. So it really has to feel like it's authentic for them. So really just turning things that aren't helping their cause into things that are helping their cause is kind of how I help them understand it. There's a range there. Okay. So thought stopping. That one is really taking those negative or non-productive self-talk statements and kind of recognizing that, okay, that's not helpful. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a breath, or I'm going to have some sort of, cue word that I say to myself, like stop, visualize a stop sign, whatever it is, and then change it to something that they've decided, or maybe they've worked on to come up with a list of what those things are, that they can say that it is more helpful in that moment. So recognizing the thought, having a way to stop it, and then turning it into something that's more helpful for them. The second one is word elimination. So making a list of those words that really don't belong in their vocabulary. The can'ts, the don'ts, the pressure. I remember a long time ago, Venus and Serena Williams, the tennis players, they had already come on the scene. They were phenomenal tennis players. They were giving an interview, and they said that they're in their home growing up, the word can't didn't exist. And I thought, well, isn't that great? Isn't that a great idea where it was all about can and opportunity, not about can't, okay? And the last one is just reframing and having a perspective check. So really understanding that, okay, I understand that's what I thought. Now, here is this an opportunity to reframe it into something else. So turning that nervousness into excitement, kind of seeing obstacles as opportunities. And Michael Jordan talked about this. At the end of his career, people were asking him constantly, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? And he said, well, when the butterflies go away. And I thought that was phenomenal because it was like, okay, that's telling him he cares. He had reframed that not into nerves, oh my goodness, I can't go out there and play, but more like, okay, it means I care, it means I'm excited, let's keep going. So tools to build self-confidence. So that highlight reel, I talked about earlier, kind of that, ESPN web gem kind of feel to it. So the more athletes can go over that and see that, yes, I'm really good at my sport. And it also helps them feel not so distanced from when they've done really good things. So if that becomes really the narrative in their mind is, okay, I can do this, and they're using that as their imagery, that just builds self-confidence. It just 100% is going to help them feel more confident. And then positive affirmation statements, things that start with I can, I am, and I will. So that's the internal piece. So I often have athletes write down a bunch of qualities. I do it on like an A to Z thing, where for every letter in the alphabet, they have to come up with a positive characteristic about themselves as an athlete. And then from there, they pick their favorites, and those become their I statements. And then that becomes the new kind of self-talk, new narrative. So that's the internal piece. And then I always say the inside has to match the outside, which leads right into the positive body language. We've all, seen it, and we're, shoulders down, head down, kind of a reaction to something. So really making sure that those two match. I always say to athletes, a picture's worth 1,000 words, so maybe let's watch some video of athletes that have really good positive body language, maybe some examples of athletes that don't, so they'll know what they want to make sure and avoid. So that's just another thing to be mindful of when it comes to building self-confidence. And then quote here, belief is the thermostat that regulates all success, which I think just kind of sums up this section on confidence. Okay, so we're going to switch gears for the last section of the presentation today into this kind of newer idea by Davis, Wadey, and Evans about sports injury-related growth, which I'm really kind of enjoying delving into this even more. Just this idea that going through the injury is an opportunity for growth. The stress can be facilitative, and it's really unifying this idea of, okay, how am I coming out of this on the other side in a better way? Okay, so they've defined it as perceived changes that propel injured athletes to a higher level of functioning than that which existed before their injury. So it can be either physical or mental. So there's just an increased self-awareness. There's an increase in body awareness, increase of what their body's going through as it's been injured, as it's going through rehab, and then as it's going through return to sport. So just much more body aware in general. I hear that often from athletes when they come back. And they're more aware of self-talk. They're more aware of talking about how they talk about injuries, what they're saying themselves during rehab, and they've just kind of reframed a lot of different things. So the self-awareness, just in general, is completely heightened when an athlete's going through an injury. So basically, rather than interpreting their injury as a threat and obstacle, they were able to identify possible opportunities and benefits that could be derived from being injured. So opportunities to develop other parts of their game, be it working on their mental game, be it picking up books they never had time to pick up, videos that they're now watching. So a lot of different ways to grow that is not their traditional way, different roles that they may have at practice as well. So there's all these different opportunities that the athletes tend to not even really lean into because they're out there actually participating in their sport, as well as any kind of the relationships that they have with their teammates as well. So with this, we'll put all these up here since we're going. There we go. Okay. So with this, the stress can be facilitative, and actually that sense of hardiness to know I can go through tough things. There's a mental toughness. I'm stronger than I thought. I can get through this and be even better on the other side of it. And there's a pitcher called Spencer Strider. and when he went to college at Clemson, and when he was there, he was going to have surgery, and there was an article about it, and I thought this really just summed this up perfectly. I'm going to get better because of Tommy John, not despite of Tommy John. So perfect example of, okay, because this concept isn't something, it's not a goal you have, to have this growth. It's not something you work towards. It's something that if you go through this journey and go through this process and land there on the other side, you have quotes like that from great athletes, right? Which is really just sums it all up. So, and this idea and process isn't a given or an expectation. It's just an opportunity. And it doesn't mean there aren't bumps and bruises along the way, because there certainly are. But here's just, all these different possibilities if they're open to it. So, with all this being said, the mental skills training piece of all of it is really something that the athletes can take control over, right? There's so many different things. There's so many things that you can't control in sport. Again, it's part of the reason we love it. There's, the big question mark with all of it. But this is the piece that they can, really build their confidence, have some fun, but also know there's this big world of uncontrollables out there when it comes to their sport, but the mental skills training piece is what they do have control over, which will allow them to enjoy their sport more. And a quote I often share with them is, you can't control the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Resource lists in case they can't come to a sports psychologist or somebody like yourself, that you can teach them how to reframe that self-talk? Because, do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a thing of oppositions. Here's what you might say, here's some other words. So, because they may not even be able to come up with those words. I know
Right.
it sounds weird, but
The resource in terms of helping them come up with what they say themselves that aren't helpful?
right, that are helpful.
That are helpful.
Because they can identify what isn't helpful.
Yes.
But they may not be able to actually shift it into how could I say that? That's better.
Yeah. Great question. So yes.
Besides the simple I can and I can't.
Correct. Right. Rather just going polar. Yes. Right. So two things. Yes, because that happens a lot, because they'll come up with this big list of negatives, and then it's like, oh, and there's this, and let's write this one down. And then we like, okay, well, what can be more helpful? And then they go, I'm not sure. Right. It's so not uncommon.
Complete blank.
Yes. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll sit there and we'll tell me about some of your really great, outings. What would what were you saying then? Well, oftentimes, number one, it's, well, I really wasn't saying much. That's kind of the first thing. There wasn't a lot of thinking. But additionally, they'll say, well, gosh, I was kind of telling myself, I'm really good at this. I can trust my stuff here. I'm pretty good. And then if another layer to that is, what would you tell a teammate that had that negative self-talk? And that'll get it. That'll just get it rolling. Oh, well, I would tell them, Johnny, he always says, these 5 things. So I always tell him this, 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 and this, and this, which is great. And then it's like, okay, well, back to that, be your own best friend. So those 2 things usually will elicit some really good positives to change that too. Great question. Yes. Yes.
What if they just don't believe the positives in themselves? I mean, you say do positive self-talk, but they're kind of like still over,
Yeah.
very negative.
Yes, great question. So that's also why that use the productive versus the positive. So we kind of go, okay, well, we'll say, an athlete may say, well, yes, here's what I probably should say, but I don't really get behind that. I'm like, okay, well, where on that scale can we be? It doesn't have to be black and white, but there can be a scale of, is there a way to get away from the purely negative self-talk where we can maybe just inch over? We don't have to go a mile, but let's take an inch. And then it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe I can not say can't, and I don't want to say can yet, or I'm not ready for this, but that they can take a step, and that's okay. And that's truly the meeting them where they're at piece of, if they're not ready and it's not going to be impactful, you're right, then there's no sense in them saying it, because it's not going to land. It's not going to help them in any way. So seeing if they can maybe just make a baby step in that direction. And again, they may not go all the way to the other side of that, because every athlete has a different personality. Some operate a little more aggressive and angry sometimes kind of feel, and that's okay. But there has to be something. So it isn't about being positive, but let's try and steer away from it being non-productive or hurting their cause, so to speak.
How do you advise athletes when they're in situations where they have external, like you have coaches or teammates telling them negative things, but they're trying to then navigate like how to.
So it's an external distraction of a lot of negativity, like a negative.
Like if you have a coach basically being like, you keep messing this up, like you're not, like I'm gonna pull you, like you're not gonna be on the field anymore, or like you do better basically.
Yes. Great question. So I think with athletes that are getting some of that where it feels pretty pressure laden, talking about, okay, well, we can't control, that's one of the things we can't control. We can't control outcomes. We can't control teammates. We can't control opponents. We can't control coaches. But we can control our response to them and kind of what we're going to do with that information. So if they're hearing something that maybe is a bit negative and putting that pressure statement, it's truly like, okay, you can then let that pass through, and then what can you say to yourself that can still keep you in a positive spot? Because regardless, you can't control what coaches are going to do in terms of playing time, not playing time, any of those things, but you can control how you feel about yourself and the belief you have and the way you prepare, if that's helpful. All right, I know it's been a long day for y'all. Thank you for hanging in there for the last one. I appreciate it.